Monmouth is undefeated at home.
You'll never hit a bigger home run.
Floyd, that's why you became a superstar.
I think we could definitely come together as a team and.
Not possible!
Hello, welcome to this week's episode of The Extra Point. My name is Warren Francois, and in today's show, we will give our thoughts on the Super Bowl, college hoops, and Monmouth basketball. Also, we have a special interview with players from the Monmouth ice hockey team. Let's kick it over to Nate and Notori with the Pro Sport.
Welcome to the Pro Spot. I'm Notori.
And I'm Nate. And let's get right to it, shall we?
All right.
The New England Patriots defeated the Atlanta Falcons 34-28 Sunday night in Super Bowl 51. Patriots QB Tom Brady threw for 466 yards and 2 touchdowns, and running back James White accounted for 139 all-purpose yards and 3 touchdowns. Atlanta held a 28-3 lead in the third quarter, but New England scored 31 unanswered points to clinch their 5th Super Bowl title in franchise history. God, what a game and what a meltdown.
That was an amazing game.
No doubt.
Say. Especially for Tom Brady, I think that was an amazing game.
Personally, best one I've seen.
To this day, I still don't understand how people hate on him. I really don't understand.
Oh, they're just mad because he's that good.
The man now has 5 rings for each finger. That's an amazing accomplishment for him, and I'm actually happy that he did get to clinch this victory. I don't know what was going on in the beginning of the game, but I was happy to see how quickly they came back.
I know, right?
It was amazing. There was 7 minutes left in the fourth quarter, and you just did so much in a couple of minutes. Sent it into overtime too, and took the win home.
I doubt it's going to be a long time until we see something like that again.
Definitely, but I know the Falcons are so hurt. It's crazy.
Oh.
All right, we're going to go into our next topic. The Portland Trailblazers defeated the Dallas Mavericks 114-113 Tuesday night. Dirk Nowitzki hit a 3-point shot with 3 seconds remaining to give Dallas a 1-point lead, but it was C.J. McCollum's floater that decided the game, as it gave Portland the lead back with less than 1 second remaining. This game did have playoff implications, as both teams are vying for the final spot in the Western Conference.
Why have we been talking about these two teams? That's what I want to know.
Because they do such amazing things. It's just like that. It's like, why do we talk about the Warriors every day? It's because it's an amazing team. These are 2 teams that are coming from the depths where no one pays attention to them, and they're making it known that they should be worried about.
That's true. And they'll probably just get knocked out in the first round.
Hey, you never know what will happen, especially with the Portland Trailblazers, the way they've been playing their recent game against OKC.
Yeah, I'll give them this. They really stepped it up.
They surely did. Well, we're going to take a quick break, but we'll be right back with more of The Extra Point on Hawk TV, channel 12.1.
The smallest moments can have the biggest impact on a child's life. Take time to be a dad today. Call or visit fatherhood.gov to learn more.
Welcome back to The Extra Point here on Hawk TV. We're now going to debate some of the hottest topics in sports with Joe and Nate. All right, guys, our first topic comes from the NFL Super Bowl 51. Might go down as the best Super Bowl ever played. After rallying over 31 unanswered points, can we say that the Patriots won the game, or did the Falcons lose the game?
Well, definitely an amazing game, and I think a lot of people want to turn that game off in the third quarter. I did, personally. The Falcons definitely mismanaged this game in a lot of ways. They really didn't go away from their script, which got them to the lead in the first place. They should have continued to run the ball with Devontae Freeman, who was averaging almost 7 yards a carry. But the greatest head coach of all time, the greatest quarterback of all time, do their thing once again in another big Super Bowl. And, you know, the greatness of Tom Brady was on full display, and I don't think any team was going to beat them that night.
Look, I'm not going to deny Tom Brady's greatness because the man is due his greatness. I've said it countless times that he's the best. But I think this falls more on the Falcons as the Patriots. I mean, come on. In the third quarter, you have a 28-3 lead. I get it's Tom Brady, but I mean, that's over a 3+ touchdown lead. You got to preserve that. I think this falls way more on the Falcons than it does the fact that the Patriots stormed back, because the Falcons should have put this thing away a long time ago. Hell, they were up 21-3 going into halftime, and I mean, like I said, not to disrespect Brady or Belichick, but most teams would have crumbled under that situation. They failed to break their opponent, and they couldn't win the game. That was their problem.
Yeah, I mean, for Bill Belichick, he basically waited for Dan Quinn, an inexperienced head coach, to make mistakes. And it was also on Kyle Shanahan as well, who's now took the head coaching job of the San Francisco 49ers. But Tom Brady making some really perfect throws, Martellus Bennett, Chris Hogan, the legendary play to Julian Edelman, which, that's another debate. Is that catch better than the David Tyree catch that beat New England a couple years ago? But I'm really excited to see what New England can do next year when you have two guys that didn't even play in the playoffs, Jimmy Garoppolo and Rob Gronkowski. One can make the team better by playing, and one can make the team better by being traded for some other players. So it's going to be kind of scary to see, even at 40, what Tom Brady's going to do next season as well.
I mean, that's a big asterisk if Gronk's been in the playoffs, because you know him. He's usually done by the end of the season.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, for my take, I think the Falcons, through this game, it was a choke on them because when you're up 25 points in the third quarter, you have to close it out. You have to put your exclamation point on there. You have to close that game out. But Tom Brady just shows the resiliency and the greatness of him. You have the greatest coach in Bill Belichick. Monmouth's own Chris Hogan made some good catches. Julian Edelman, that catch that he made was just crazy.
I think it's better than Tyree's catch.
The still photos of it, it doesn't make any sense if you're looking at it from even a second before that ball dropped into his hands. I mean, just an unbelievable catch. And really, you got to admire the conditioning of New England when Atlanta was getting tired in the fourth quarter, and their defense was getting tired. Their secondary was getting tired, committing a lot of penalties, a lot of holding calls, which were rightfully called.
That killed them.
New England still was able to have a lot of energy, and were moving at the same speed they were in the first quarter, even when some passes were being dropped and they weren't quite on the same page. They kept the same physical level of play the entire game, and that's really admirable, and that's a testament of their preseason preparation. And you saw after the game, Bill Belichick said, we're 5 weeks delayed on next season. We're 5 weeks behind everybody else. And that's the kind of mindset he has. That's the kind of mindset he's going to continue to have. And he's an unbelievable coach, and they're an unbelievable team.
Well, that would do it for our first topic here on the Extra Point. We'll be back here with our second topic here on the Extra Point here on Hawk TV.
For those dealing with the struggles of caring for a loved one, we hear you. Visit aarp.org/caregiving for advice and support.
Welcome back to the Extra Point. Our second topic comes from college basketball. Sitting at 20.0 and number 1 in the country, is Gonzaga for real, Matt?
Well, guys, no. And I say this every year because I see those headlines on Twitter. Is this Gonzaga team Mark Few's team that'll go to the Final Four? We speculate about this every year. They always start out undefeated, really hot. And every year they fall short. And it just goes to show that they don't really have the talent to compete with the bigger boys once they get to the tournament. Personnel, they do have some good players, Joe, but when you compare them to a team like Kentucky or a team like Kansas, it just doesn't stack up the same way to me.
The argument is, they do have the marquee wins against Florida, Iowa State, Arizona, but
that's it.
That's really it, and it's a down year for BYU in the conference. They beat St. Mary's pretty handily, but in that matchup again, that'll really determine to me, are they going to go undefeated, which you'd have to imagine they are, similar to the Wichita State team a few years ago. They don't pass the eye test for me, and they're beating teams by a good amount, and a lot of people don't get to watch their games because they're usually at 11 o'clock p.m. on our coast here. But they're not playing a very flashy style of basketball. It's mostly in the half court. They really don't have a lot of depth in their front court, which is going to be an issue in March when foul trouble happens and they play some more athletic bigs. But I don't think this is Mark Few's best team, if that's more of the debate. I mean, he's had much better players. He had a great player last year in Domantas Sabonis, who's thriving in Oklahoma City, and Karnowski's not the same type of player. He's not the same type of big to run an offense through.
And you bring up Przemek Karnowski. I said right before we went on, it takes the guy 10 seconds to run up the court. And, it limits what you could do on offense. You can't run like the Kentucky style when you're running in transition, dishing it to your guards. You really got to slow it down and wait for this big guy to get up the court. And what made it so dynamic for them last year is they had him, but they had Sabonis also to really sort of balance out the two bigs. And Wilcher also. Wilcher could run the court too, and he could space the court. The problem with Karnowski is he just sits down there, and he's like a trait.
Yeah.
And we say it every year. you know, when they jump out to this. And I just go back to their schedule. And I've been such a proponent of moving this team up because they recruit like a high major, but they play mid-majors.
And not only that, they're getting transfers from Pac-12 teams. Nigel Williams-Goss from Washington, that a USC transfer last year. There's guys that are good enough to play in the Pac-12 that I'd rather play for a Gonzaga team against some lesser competition and really inflate their numbers and have less success in March than the big team.
And that's ultimately why they fall short every year prior to, say, the Elite Eight or the Final Four, because you play teams like Pepperdine and Loyola Marymount, and then you get to the tournament, oh, wait, we got to play Kentucky. We got to play Kansas. and it's just so much of a hard transition that I don't think the school really realizes, and I think they know, I think Mark Few knows, that they could play up because they beat Arizona. And they've traditionally fared well against their West Coast counterparts in the Pac-12. And honestly, if you're the Pac-12, they'd welcome a team like Gonzaga in to make the conference better.
They beat Arizona while they were still kind of getting their freshmen together, Arizona. Arizona's kind of hit their stride a little bit more. The win against St. Mary's is huge, but one thing for me, Washington is able to get all these big-time recruits. Every year they get, a guy like Markel Fultz, last year was Marcus Chris, and they get these five-star guys that want to play for Lorenzo Romar. If they want to play in Washington, say in the state of Washington, why isn't Spokane that destination? I don't know if it's going to become that if they do bounce up to the Pac-12. I think that could be huge for recruiting. Mark Few has an established reputation as a regular season coach, but that'd be interesting to see how that kind of affects West Coast recruiting, and especially if you're going to be able to compete against UCLA, USC, and some of those teams, and like you said, Arizona. But yeah, win against St. Mary's. Got to keep that in mind. St. Mary's lost to Texas Arlington by 12 points.
Yep.
So.
and this Gonzaga team this year reminds me a lot of that Wichita State team from 3 years ago. Wichita State that year went undefeated in the regular season, I believe 33-0. They made it to the second round of the tournament and lost to the eventual Final Four candidate in Kentucky. That team had almost the same talent mirror-wise. I think this Gonzaga team's a little better than Wichita State, but it just looks so familiar to me because I've seen this story before. Everyone kept saying this Wichita State team is one of the best you'll ever see out of a mid-major, and they go and they underperform in the tournament. And to me, it's ultimately going to be the destination for Gonzaga this year. That's why I say to everyone, sell hard on Gonzaga because it's. Listen, they're number. You can make the argument they're the number one team in the country, but as you said, they don't pass the eye test.
So you're not a believer in the winning becomes a habit,
No, well, it's just they don't play the competition.
No, I agree.
And listen, and I agree. I say this: if you dominate for your competition for 4 to 5 years, or even as long as Mark Few's been there, that's time. It's time to move up.
Yeah.
And now it could have been the same case for Wichita State in the Missouri Valley Conference. If you're winning consistently each year, you move up. And I think that's just the traditional totem pole sort of mentality of college basketball that as you're gradually improving as a program, you move up to play better competition.
And I think a lot of people would argue that the Missouri Valley Conference is a better conference than the West Coast Conference, especially nowadays.
Yeah, I agree with both of you guys. I don't take this team seriously just because they're in a weaker conference. They don't play that good of a competition. They got good wins against Arizona and Florida, but that's about it. Gonzaga's not real for me. So. All right, well, that will do it for our debate segment. When we come back, Matt and Notori will have the Hawks Nest. You're watching The Extra Point on Hawk TV, channel 12.1.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. But it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello, that's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
Welcome back to The Extra Point. This is the Hawks Nest. My name is Matt DeLuca alongside Notori. How are you doing, Notori?
I'm great, Matt. How are you today?
I am great. So we're going to talk some Monmouth basketball. An exciting weekend for the Monmouth men's basketball team. Friday night.
Beautiful weekend.
Friday night as the team came home after Justin Robinson broke the all-time scoring record. They come home and face a tough St. Peter's team, ranked second in the conference. They had a lot of good players, one of them being Quadir Welton. A wild game from the start, low scoring, The men ended up coming out with a victory in overtime. It took every single player on that bench for the Hawks for a variety of different reasons. They won 71-70. You were at that game along with me. What did you think?
You know, being able to watch the boys play from the student section is actually amazing. I like that I have that on-court experience. Watching that game, you know, I'm watching what they're doing. It was a slow start on both ends, to be honest. And then you come out of the locker room at second half, and St. Peter starts blowing them out of the water. And, you know, it's as if the boys, you know, let off a little bit, but, you know, they realized that they need to pick it back up. And I honestly think the boys came hungry. They wanted that game more than anything. They sent it into overtime and took the victory, and I couldn't be more proud.
Well, one of the storylines out of that game was that Micah Seaborn, late second half, came up a little gimpy on his MCL, left the game, tried to come back, was unable to do so. Not only did they lose Micah Seaborn in that game, Jelana Hornbeek fouled out, and Chris Brady was in foul trouble. So in that lineup in overtime, the Hawks had Justin Robinson, Colin Stewart, Diego Quinn, Austin Tillman, and Josh James. A very strange lineup that King Rice threw out there in the overtime period, but they had to, and it worked.
It worked. And honestly, I think him throwing them in there, you know, gives them a chance for everyone to see what exactly they can really do, because, you know, you see the automatic starting five, and then you see a future and the next ones that you bring out. You know, with Chris leaving, now you have Diego, and you will still have Zach Tillman.
Talk about Diego. He had some valuable minutes. He had that big block at the end of overtime. Had a chance to win. He had a chance to win the game at the end of regulation.
There's a lot of commotion on the inside, you know.
Listen, I've always been a big fan of Diego. I lived next to him in freshman year. You know, he's still developing his game. I talked to King Rice on Friday after the game, and he reminded everyone on air that he's still learning the game of basketball. He only picked it up in high school a couple years prior to, and he really showed why he earned that scholarship for the Monmouth Hawks. And he's really starting to come into his own.
Yes.
I think he was my MVP of that game for what he did.
You know what I really love about him now? He's using his strength. He knows he's a big guy, and he's using that to his advantage. And, you know, usually refs go against him on that and, you know, call him for every little foul, every little tap he gives any player. And honestly, that game against St. Peter's and with the Rider game, he did not have any fouls. And I find that amazing. He played amazing defense. He got boards. And that block at the end was just amazing. It's like, that's what we needed. And I just loved the whole game. You know, Micah Seaborn getting hurt, it was unfortunate, but he also did play at Rider, and he's getting saved up for the tournament. We're going to need him for the tournament. And once you lose a player, you can see how well you do need that player after he's lost.
And you mentioned that Rider game. The Monmouth Hawks did go to Rider Monday night. They defeated them by a score of 74-69. Another quality win on the road for the Monmouth Hawks. You go back to non-conference, they won at Wagner, at Memphis. Even in conference, they had a couple nice wins on the road. What did you make of that victory? Because you know and I know Rider's a very hostile environment to go and play in. And the guys got the job done, and they won a program record 10th game in a row. 10
consecutive wins in a row. And I really always wonder what goes through these boys' heads as they're on their way to their games. Like what is going on in their mind. And the one thing I do know is definitely that they won a W. And they wanted that game as well, too. You know, they were making stops. They were playing amazing defense. And watching that game, I was just in awe. You know, a lot of fouls got called here and there, some of them that weren't even fouls. But the boys wanted that game more than anything. They didn't want to go into OT. And although I forgot number 3's name from Rider, he came out of nowhere, dropped 2 3-pointers, and he also had a layup, and it tied up the game. But the boys wanted it more, and you had big shots coming from them. And you know, you can see where they're going to be at once it goes to Manhattan on Friday. It is being a late game, but I just feel like the boys are just going to keep winning. They're going to finish off the program this season amazingly.
And we talk about that Manhattan game. That is the next game for the Monmouth men's team Friday night at Manhattan. That game on WMCX and ESPNU. One quick recap of the women's team. They fell at Quinnipiac 74-54 Saturday afternoon. The women are struggling right now in the Torrey. 3 in a row they have dropped. 1 in double overtime, 1 at the final minute, and then a blowout like this on the road. They've hit a rough patch so far.
They have, and you know, I feel like the women can make a statement for themselves in the MAC tournament once we reach there. Their next player is St. Peter's, and you know, it's also a rivalry between them. The girls just got to stop turning over the ball, defeating Kayla Shaw. They have so many different shooters on that team. I really think the women can come out strong.
So the next game for the women's team will be Friday night as they travel to take on St. Peter's. That will be all for the Hawks Nest. For Notori, my name is Matt. We will be right back here on The Extra Point on Hawk TV, channel 12.1.
The odds of this boy achieving his dream in fashion? 1 in 23 million. The odds of having a child diagnosed with autism? 1 in 88. I am Tommy Hilfiger. Learn more at autismspeaks.org/signs.
Welcome back to The Extra Point. My name is Matt DeLuca. I'm joined by 3 members of the Monmouth ice hockey team, Anthony DeFiti, Talon Ribson, and Steve Benura. Guys, how you doing?
Good, how are you, Matt?
We'd like to thank you for joining us. Big weekend for you guys. You guys not only beat Seton Hall, you also clinched a playoff berth. What does that mean to you guys to get to the playoffs?
It's the goal we set out to accomplish this year, clinch a playoff spot, and then ultimately go to the playoffs and hopefully win a championship.
Yeah, if I could add on to that, I'd like to add that, I mean, we're all on our final year. He's a senior. We're 6th-year seniors, so coming into our final year, making playoffs is a big deal for us.
I was going to say, especially after the way we lost last year in the playoffs, it was good for us to get back to where we are now, especially with 9 new freshmen that we have. So it was a good step in the right direction, too.
So you guys mentioned season goals. Not only to make the playoffs, what were some of your other goals coming into this season?
I think one of them mainly was to improve defensively. Over the past couple of years, we've been letting up a lot of goals, not because of our goaltenders, because they usually stand on their heads, but as a team defensively, we usually shut down after holding a lead, and then we end up losing games because of it. So I feel like we just really wanted to step that up.
This year, too, was important for us to kind of get hot at the right time. Last year, we started the season 13-1, whereas this year we started 6-6, 7-7, but now we're on a 5-game conference winning streak. So we're hot heading into the playoffs, which is big because last year we were on a losing streak and it didn't turn out too well for us. So
I just say an overall team game, like Tony said, getting hot at the right time, especially when you go into the playoffs. You don't want to play the hottest team going in. I mean, we've all seen what the Giants can do in the playoffs or what the Kings can do in the Stanley Cup playoffs. So I feel like the hottest team is always the best team going in.
So you guys mentioned that you're all seniors. What is your most memorable moment that you will take away from being part of this experience? If you had to pick one or some.
This season for me, it was one of the goals I had against Ryder. They've always been a rival against us, and I think my goal made it like 2-2 in the game. We wound up losing, but it was a very hard-fought game. It was a nice goal, so that's something personally that I'll remember from this season.
And as my entire career goes, I'd like to make a nice little retrospective view of my freshman year. I think that was one of the best teamly atmospheres I've ever had, and I wish I could, bring that apart of our team this year, but, different people, different era, things change.
I'd say our win against Princeton this year, just because they were in first place. They won the championship. They won our conference last year, so beating them, I think, send a message to them that the next time they have the playoffs, they won't take us as lightly, and it's going to be a hard-fought game.
So as you guys are seniors, and you talk a lot about the team, what are your individual roles on the team?
Well, speaking for myself, I'm the goalie, the senior goalie. I just try to motivate and instill some confidence and maturity in all the younger kids, and even these guys too. Like, they come ready to play every day, but there's nothing wrong with hearing it from an older guy too.
My personal role is probably shutdown defenseman. I mean, I go out there, my coach puts me against their top lines and tells me to stop their scoring, so we stop their scoring.
And for me, be our best right wing, I guess. Currently tops in the team in points, so I guess I'm looked at as a playmaker, make things happen continuously, so that's why I feel like I'm there.
If I could add on to both of theirs, I mean, this guy is supposed to bring the intensity, and he does every single game. He comes out firing, ready to go, ready to take somebody's head off if he has to. He does what he has to do for his team. And this one, he stands on his head and just stops every puck possible if he can do it.
And you guys are seniors, and you've played the game for a long time. How did you guys get into playing hockey growing up?
My dad was a goalie for hockey, so it came with it. I always went to his men's league game when I was little, and then when I was 9 years old, I threw on a pair of pads, and the rest is history.
For me, I have no history of hockey in my family. My godfather actually brought over a hockey net to my house for some reason when I was 3, and that's it.
I started at roller hockey. My older brother switched over to ice, so I switched over to ice, and it was the best thing I ever did.
So do you guys have any NHL inspirations, any favorite players, favorite teams that sort of inspired you to keep playing in the sport?
I'm a Ranger fan, so Henrik Lundqvist is my favorite goalie, and two Devils fans over here.
Big Devils fans. Big Devils fans.
I just try to model my game after him. I've worked with the goalie coach actually who trains him too, so I have a little a little perspective on his game too, so it's just something to feed off of.
Not even a shout out to Richter?
Nah. That was when I first became a Ranger fan. I didn't get to see him play a lot. I've been with Lundqvist for 12 years.
I'm just saying. As a Devils fan, I always looked up to pretty much the entire core of the Devils defense that I grew up with. So it was a little bit of Scott Stevens, who would just lay those open ice hits, knock somebody out. It was just a beautiful thing to do. And on the other side, either Scott Niedermayer or Brian Rafalski, they were both playmaking defensemen. They made offense happen, even though they were stopping goals from being scored. So to be able to do both sides of the game was huge for me.
And I guess for me, just seeing the Devils win 3 Stanley Cups in a 9-year span really just captivated me in my youth. So
Must be nice.
it was. Thanks.
So we mentioned playoffs to start off this interview, and the playoffs often signify sort of the waning down and the end of your season. What are your overall takeaways from this season? Of course, your final season. What did you guys make of the way your team performed this season?
I think we didn't start out as we wanted to. Like Tony said last year, we started out 13-1 or 13-3, something like that, and then we fell off at the end. This year, it's kind of like a role reversal where we started off a game or two under 500 continuously, but now that we're getting hot at the right time, I'd say it's building up to a better success than it was last year.
Yeah, as Bono said, we had 9 new freshmen this year. It took a little time to get used to everybody. We had to really get into a gel, and like every team, it takes some time. But once we got into it, we started, gaining the grasp for each other's play and really figuring it out. And now we're on a streak right now. We're hoping to keep going.
Yeah, and just being a relatively young team, even though we have 4 or 5 seniors, we're mostly freshmen and sophomores actually. It just takes some time to learn how to win. And we finally started to do that in December and January and February. So now we're hoping, like they both said, to carry that into 2 weekends from now when we have playoffs in Lawrenceville, New Jersey. So that's where we'll be trying to make it all come together.
So one final question. Can I get a quick playoff preview from you guys? Maybe sizing up.
I'm guaranteeing a championship. And if we win, I hope we'll be back on the show with that trophy in the middle of March because it's going to happen. So I just want to put that on the record.
If you'll have us.
Oh, of course. Yeah, we'd love to have you back.
I'm jumping on Tony's bandwagon right there. I'm going to guarantee that too. Make it happen.
I'm not going to guarantee it. I'm going to be that devil's advocate for a second and say as long as we work hard, we'll get far. But who knows? It can go anywhere.
So guys, I'd like to thank you for joining us here on The Extra Point. Best of luck the rest of the season and in the playoffs. We hope to see that trophy here on this stage.
It will be.
In about a month or so. So that will just about do it for this segment. Stay tuned for more here on The Extra Point, here on Hawk TV, channel 12.1.
7,000 students drop out every school day. That's 1 every 26 seconds. It's time that students know that we believe in them.
Inspire a student and share your message of support at GIF Support.
That will do it for this week's episode of The Extra Point. If you guys have any questions, comments, or topic suggestions, hit us up at hawktv12.com. For everyone at The Extra Point, my name is Wallace Francois, and we want you to get the point.